Okay, let me start that over. I'm excited for today's session on navigating pumping because how easy is it to find a webinar just about pumping? It is not easy. So we wanted to make sure that our pumping moms feel very supported on their breastfeeding journey because I never knew this when I was breastfeeding, and it really blew my mind when somebody said to me, because I was exclusively pumping, they said, Elena, pumping is also breastfeeding. And that really warmed my heart because sometimes as a pumping mom, you can feel a little bit down on yourself. And so I just want to remind everybody for National Breastfeeding Week, every journey is equally beautiful. No matter what you're doing, you are remarkable. Another couple housekeeping moments. The recording for last week will come out. It ran into a couple Zoom issues, but it will come out. And so the recording for this one will come out next week. All right, with that, we can continue. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lelena Abari, and I am from Mom Cozy. And Mom Cozy has been around since 2018. Our staple is the wearable breast pump, but we also focus on all the products to bring comfort to you as a mom. Nursing bras, pregnancy pillows, perhaps you've used. We also have baby care items. And we've been endorsed by 4 million moms in over 60 plus countries and growing. And our commitment to you is to create cozy designs born from love. And please join our community. Emily goes on our community every Wednesday. Take your phone out, get on there, take a shot of this QR code. And you can also meet moms, 15,000 plus moms from around the world. We update you on upcoming events. We have great content catered to your needs, and we have the latest on Mom Cozy. And yeah, before Emily gets into it, the way we work is please put your questions in the Q&A. With so many people on this webinar, it's really hard to keep things going on the chat. So please put them in the Q&A function, and we are going to try to get to as many questions as we can at the very end. And I just, be thoughtful because Emily will likely answer your questions as you get going with her presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily.
All right, I'm so excited. I am happy to be here with you all. Happy Friday. I am so impressed that so many of you are tuning in live from so many incredible places. Before I get started on pumping, we're gonna go through pumping basics, like what do you need to know? I'll properly introduce myself. My name is Emily Silver. I am one of the co-founders of NAPS. You can, if you want to check NAPS out, we're on Instagram. Nurture by NAPS is our handle. And so who is NAPS, and what is important to know about me and NAPS before I start teaching you? I was a former labor and delivery nurse. I am now a family nurse practitioner. I'm an IBCLC, which is the long credential for a lactation consultant, and I'm a mom to 3 girls. And my feeding journey looked different for all 3 of my own kids. So whenever I offer support and education, or when you interact with anyone at NAPS, you will always engage with a registered nurse or a nurse practitioner or some type of medical professional. We have a doctor of pelvic floor physical therapy on our team, a doctor of occupational therapy, a mental health counselor, and we're all in one place. So I mentioned our handle is Nurture by NAPS. That's also our online membership platform, Nurture by NAPS. And so when you hop in and engage with us through education like this, or peer support groups, or lactation or sleep support, those are the types of professionals that you'll always be working with, and in one place. Parenting is challenging, right? Because you have to go here for this and here for that and try to piecemeal it all together. So we want to make you feel like you're getting it all in one spot. And we are all parents just like you. That's my business partner. We're moms just like you. We're always going to offer you and serve up some judgment-free advice. So today I want to talk about pumping. That's what brings us here on this Friday. And give you sort of the basics and the 101. I am going to keep an eye on our time so that I can answer your questions. The best part of being here live is to be able to address those questions in real time. And so let's get started. I want to go through common pumping scenarios and why you may choose to pump. There's a lot of, no surprise here, there's a lot of scenarios, and these are just going to be some of them. The biggest question I get, especially from my families who are expecting a baby or they're just home with a newborn in those early weeks or, those days even, is they'll say, when when would I start pumping? When should I start pumping? And truly the answer to that question is going to be pretty different based on the family that I'm working with. You really should start pumping when it makes sense for you to start pumping. It might not be what your other friend did. There's different situations and examples. So let me give you a few of those. And again, this is not all of them, just some. But sometimes my moms are breastfeeding. They're early on, and perhaps their full milk supply isn't in yet. And so last Friday, we talked about breastfeeding 101, and we talked a lot about supply and demand. And anytime that baby is at the breast, sucking and swallowing, it's telling the brain, like, let's circulate more hormones to make milk. So if I have a baby that I'm working with that they're just not getting it yet, maybe they're a NICU baby or they're still working on breathing, or they just haven't gotten that really strong suck and swallow coordination yet, we may need to use some pumping to tell the brain and the body, hey, we need to make sure we bring in that milk supply. Sometimes early on, your baby may need additional calories. I'm going to talk about supplementing and what that actually means, so hang on to that. I may be working with parents who have been home on maternity or paternity leave, and now they're getting ready to go back to work. And so they may be breastfeeding, they may be exclusively pumping, but now life is going to look different for them and their schedule is going to look different. They may be pumping so that their partner or their family members or their caregivers can be feeding their baby. And then I have plenty of parents that I work with who they're not breastfeeding, and they maybe have decided to exclusively pump. That might actually be what worked better for them, or they enjoy it, or they may be using a combination of ways to feed their baby. So I think what's really cool about feeding your baby, just like with pump parts, and we'll talk about sizing your pump, is one size doesn't fit all. Everybody's pump parts and sizing will be different, and we're going to talk about how to size your pump, and your feeding journeys are going to look different. I want to just talk about what supplementing is. I think that's important to understand, especially when I reference moms who are breastfeeding and are pumping to get additional calories for a specific reason for their baby. Early on, early on, there may be women who weren't planning on pumping, but they got started with pumping in the hospital, or in that first week home from the hospital with a lactation nurse for certain reasons. Or you go to your first pediatrician visit and they say, okay, I want you to keep breastfeeding, but I need you to also supplement your baby. A lot of times that's confusing for parents. Like, what does that even mean? Supplementing is giving your baby extra calories. That could be breast milk, that could be formula. We're giving them extra. Why would we maybe do that early on? Sometimes I have a mom, and I said I was a labor and delivery nurse. So sometimes I have a mom who I took care of who isn't physically or mentally feeling well after delivery. Sometimes we have separation from our babies after delivery. Perhaps your baby was born prematurely and they spent time in the NICU. I'll work with women who have gestational diabetes. So we may see a low blood sugar in a baby after birth related to that gestational diabetes. I referenced the full milk supply not coming in yet. That might make a little more sense if you watch more of that breastfeeding class that we did last week, that supply and demand and how your milk changes in those early, that early week home from the hospital. And then we look at weight loss. So all babies will lose weight. All of your babies will be born at a certain weight. When you go home from the hospital, their weight will have dropped a little bit. We do anticipate that. We expect babies to lose weight. However, if they lose, and it'll depend on where you live, what country you're in, here largely in the United States, if your baby has lost 10 to 12% of their birth weight, that is when a pediatrician will recommend supplementing. And babies have 2 weeks to regain their birth weight. So we try to be patient as providers and pediatricians and give them that time to regain that weight that we expect that they will have lost a little bit. Now, we'll get into more scenarios and thoughts, but I want to call this out in case this is anybody's case. So if you are pumping early on, or you have a pediatrician who tells you that you need to supplement, the key here really is going to be that if you are breastfeeding, that you keep breastfeeding and that you have breastfeeding support. And then if you are supplementing your baby, that you do have a really great pumping plan and breastfeeding plan with your lactation consultant. Because if your goal is to exclusively breastfeed, it's okay. And I'm going to talk about bottle feeding and show you how to do it. It's okay to supplement your baby. It's okay for this to happen. We can still have a great feeding journey. We do just want to make sure you have a really wonderful plan to be sure that we're telling your brain and your body to make breast milk if that is your goal. Okay. I'll go into more scenarios, and I'm sure you have a million questions about that. But let's just take a step back and just talk about some really basic things, how to use a pump. There are a lot of pumps on the market. I'm surrounded by pumps and products right now. And so when you're thinking about using a pump, it may come down to, often it comes down to what your insurance may cover. Sometimes they give you your pump right at the hospital. Sometimes you're choosing to buy a pump out of market. I do have with me the Mom Cozy hands-free wearable pump, and I've had the opportunity to use it with some clients in the last few weeks. So sometimes I have women who are exclusively pumping, or they are going back to work and they're like, I actually want a pump that is free, like hands-free and wearable. You'll see pumps that have power sources with them. I'm going to reach down and grab them. And so, the pump actually physically needs to be plugged in, or you need to charge it up and take it with you. So when you're considering what kind of pump to get, or how to use your pump, we want to think about like all the bits and pieces that it comes with. Oftentimes with a pump, when you open that box and take a look at what you have, you're going to find that power source or the way that you need to charge and plug in your pump on the side of it. Okay. Oops, sorry, I knocked my mouse here. Does it come with tubing? So the hands-free pumps are really nice because they don't have tubing, but some of your products on the market, you're actually going to connect your pump to tubing that goes to all of your bits and pieces, which are going to be the bottles. They come with flanges, valves. I call them like the bits and the pieces. And so when thinking about pumps, that might be something you think about. Like, what is it actually going to come with? Does it have a power source? Does it not? Is it hands-free? Is it not? And then how to use it. We want to make sure that everything is nice and tight. We want a really good tight seal and connection. The common thing that I'll find with patients who are pumping and they're not getting a great output could be just as simple as that something isn't tightly sealed or connected in their pump pieces. Whatever you have for a pump, I think we live in an amazing time and era where you can find really great videos online of how to use the pump. I do think it's really wonderful if you have the opportunity to work with a lactation consultant to actually like take the pump out of the box and help you use it. So one of my favorite things to do when I go to a patient's house is I'll say, what do you like? Do you have a pump? Let's take it out of the box. Let's put it together. Let me show you how to clean it. Let me show you how to turn it on. And then I want to make sure that it fits properly. I think the biggest thing that I can have you take away from today's workshop, and I said this last week, is that pain is not normal. Pain with breastfeeding or pumping could be common. I'm sure you've heard people tell you that they've had pain with breastfeeding or pumping, but just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. And so when I have a patient or a mom that is pumping and they're having discomfort or they're struggling with output, the very first thing that I want to do is actually identify if their flange is the correct size. So no matter what pump you're using, when you open the box, you're going to see what it came with. I'm going to show you all sorts of things so this feels relevant no matter what you're using out there. Just like with parenting and with taking care of your baby, one size doesn't fit all. Your pump will come with flanges. And so flanges look different. I'm going to show you, this is like a common example of a flange. I also have some smaller ones here from Mom Cozy. And so when we're sizing your flange, we want to actually look at your nipple. A common thing that we can get confused by is the shape or the size of our areola or our breast. So you could have really large breasts, but your nipple could be really, really small. So sometimes women will gravitate towards a really big flange because their breast is very large, right? Or vice versa. And so when we're thinking about the right size, we want to go by your nipple, not your areola or your breast tissue. And so it's a little trickier, right? But when you size your nipple, it doesn't actually match the flange based on what you got. So what I think is super cool, let me explain this further. Mom Cozy, when you order their pump, they actually give you, which is super helpful, a tool to measure your nipple. So if you get something like this, or you would work with a lactation consultant, and you could actually like put it on your breast tissue over your nipple, and you're just, can you believe you're doing this? Could you ever thought you were going to measure your nipple? You're measuring your nipple and you're saying, what size am I? Okay. And so if I measure that I'm about 20 millimeters on this chart, that's going to tell me that I want to find a flange in my kit, or if my pump didn't come with it, I want to order one that is a size 24. And so when you look on the side of the flanges, it's very tiny. You might need glasses to see it. It'll say here on the side of it what size this is. Same thing with any other pump. You'll see it on the actual disc up here, or you'll see it on the side here. You'll truly see 21 millimeters, 24, 27, 30. Most pumps come with 2 options. Another reason why I love Mom Cozy, because they give you many options. But most pumps come with 2. And if it doesn't fit you, what was given to you, we do want to order you and get you the right size, because pumping with the wrong size not only can cause pain and discomfort, but it actually can impact your supply. So it could have you put out less milk because it's not the right size sometimes. Now, when I think about basic ways, like let's say you didn't have a chart like this, or you weren't sure how to measure your nipple, you can also look down and use your eyes a little bit. So when you turn your pump on and you have this tunnel here, okay, we just want nipple pulling in to the tunnel. If your nipple is chafing and rubbing and getting stuck on the sides of this tunnel, it's probably too small and too tight. If you're seeing areola or breast tissue getting sucked into this tunnel, okay, probably too big. And so I really think another thing to consider that I mentioned before is just your level of comfort. Now, what I love about these soft, flexible cushions is that sometimes women will say to me, I'm looking down and I'm pumping, and it's hard to tell what's coming through that tunnel. Nipples can be really elastic or stretchy. And so sometimes when you are looking down and you're pumping, and you guys can tell me this, you all can tell me if you've been pumping, it might be hard to tell, is that nipple or areola. The base of the nipple can be very stretchy. And so sometimes we're taking that into consideration as well. And if you have a really stretchy nipple, or that base really elongates and it's uncomfortable, then using something soft, a cushion like this, is probably going to feel better than something plastic and hard like this. So there's a lot of things that I'm thinking about. But step 1, get that pump out and figure out what size you are. I always size women. You can check your size in pregnancy, but I always size women postpartum, because I do think anatomy changes a little bit as your milk comes in. And sometimes women get started with a certain size, and several weeks or months into their pumping journey, they may actually feel like they need to change size if their if their breasts have changed and their nipples have changed in shape and size again. Let's talk about pump maintenance. I feel like I get a lot of questions about cleaning. When you get new products like pump parts, bottles, pacifiers, you can give them a really good deep clean before you use them. Some parents will sterilize them. Some parents will boil them in hot water. Some parents will use steaming products to clean things. Once your pump parts have that good deep clean, however you choose to wash them is going to be what makes the most sense for you. So meaning you may just throw them in your dishwasher in the top rack at the end of the day and run your dishwasher. You may throw them in a nice bin of hot soapy water in your sink all day long and let them collect. And at the end of the day, give them a good scrub and wash. There are sterilizing bags and products on the market now, so you could actually put them in a bag with some water and steam them in your microwave. There's a lot of ways that you can clean your pump parts. We obviously want to keep things clean, so that when we think about keeping things clean, we're worried about bacteria or pathogens. We're going to talk about breast milk and storage guidelines coming up. But I will highlight right now that in newer research of breast milk, what we see in the research is that it's incredibly robust and sturdy when it comes to bacteria and pathogens. And so some women may choose, if they're working, and they're pumping all day long, they actually may choose to put their assembled pump parts or their bits and pieces after pumping into a really clean bag and into the refrigerator, just like you would store your breast milk. It's a bit of a pumping hack. You take it in and out all day long. You'll see people doing different things basically. If your pump comes with tubing, okay, I want to point out that you don't ever want to sterilize this, steam it, dishwash it, or clean it. That actually can impact the output if the tubing gets wet. So sometimes if I see patients and they're not having a lot of output or they're struggling with the suction on their pump, it might be because they actually like boiled or sterilized their tubing. And so it depends on your pump, but using the Spectra here right now, that's what this tubing goes to. It actually connects into the pump down here, and then it goes up and it connects to the collection device. This is a closed system, meaning milk doesn't travel back into this tubing and into your pump. So it's okay to keep this just dry. And sometimes if you're struggling with suction or connection, it could be over time that the pieces just need to be replaced as well. So just keep those things in mind. But after you use your pump, you want to store your breast milk. So let's say you're back at work, or really any scenario, but back at work's a common one. You might want to have bags on hand like this, where after you're done pumping, you can take the milk that you collected, put it into the bag, and then you're able to date it, how many ounces is in it. You can put it in the fridge or you can freeze it, but then it frees up all your pump parts so that you can clean them with your hot soapy water or your sterilization and let them dry so you can use them at the next pumping session. If you're exclusively pumping, you may want to invest in extra bits and pieces and collections, just so you feel like you're not washing after every use. And maybe you have enough for the day, and then you only have to stop at the end of the day and wash everything. So I want to talk, I picked out the common things that I get asked about in these sessions. I want to talk about bottles. Because if you're pumping, you're probably doing it for a reason to feed your baby, is my guess, right? And so at some point that means you're going to give your baby a bottle. Now, a lot of patients will say to me, Emily, when can I introduce a bottle, especially as a breastfeeding mom? The American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP, I like their recommendation because it makes it more flexible for you, which is that you can introduce a bottle when good breastfeeding has been established. I like that because it is something different for everybody, right? So you may feel that a few days in to your breastfeeding journey that you're getting going with breastfeeding and it's going well and you want to introduce a bottle. For some parents, this could be several weeks out. For some parents, this might be even longer than that. Every family will do this at a different time. And like I said earlier, sometimes it's right away after delivery and that might not have been your plan. And so I want to teach you how to paste bottle feed your baby, which is a really nice way to bottle feed your baby to help with gas and fussiness, but also sort of keep it even to the playing field of breastfeeding. But let's go back to what does it mean to have good breastfeeding established? And so to me, that means that your milk has come in, that your baby is latching, or you understand what a good latch is, a deep latch. We talked about this last week. They're starting to gain weight. Basically, you feel comfortable, like you're starting to feel more comfortable than mom. Again, you may have to introduce a bottle sooner, and that's also okay. So you'll just have really great support with your feeding journey, hopefully with the nurses in the hospital and the lactation consultants once you're home. Now, I do always recommend, and this is a NAPS recommendation, you can do whatever is best for you. When I work with my moms, if the baby is about 4 weeks old and they haven't had a bottle yet, but that mom or those parents are going to need to give a bottle or they're planning to return to work, I do recommend getting a bottle into the routine. On the flip side, at NAPS, we work with a very high volume of babies who are 3 or 4 months old, and the mom is now going back to work, or the parents want to go to a wedding or step out, and their baby won't take a bottle. So we're just like doing this like really good balancing act based on what's good for your family and what your needs are going to be. So if you do plan to have periods of separation from your baby, or you are going to be returning to work, you do want to get this in the routine at some point when you're home on maternity leave, let's call it, so your baby knows how to do it. 4 weeks seems to be a sweet spot, and it doesn't mean you have to give a bottle every day. It just might mean that maybe 2 or 3 days a week you're choosing to give a bottle. Anyone can give the bottle, in my opinion, the mom, the dad, the partner, the family members, and it doesn't have to be at the same time every day. It can be whatever works for you. So how do we feed our babies a bottle? Like, what is paced bottle feeding? I think that that's really important to understand. And let me show you something really quick too. And I showed you this a little bit last week when we did our breastfeeding webinar, and I have a mom cozy pillow here. But when babies breastfeed, and we use our pillow, and I go to breastfeed this baby, babies are often laying down, which I think is really cool and interesting. Because sometimes when I see babies getting bottle fed, and some babies do well with this, but you might see the baby upright and the bottle sort of aimed like this. An older baby would probably do fine with that, right? But a younger baby that's learning to feed, that's breastfeeding, that's going to feel a little bit different from breastfeeding. When a baby is breastfeeding, they're not only on their side, but they eat in ratios. So they suck, suck, swallow, suck, suck, swallow. And so paced bottle feeding really is that the nipple on the bottom is what we would refer to as slow flow. So you probably, if you look down at any bottle that you're using anywhere, there's numbers or sizes on it. Size 1, size 2, size 3, or P for premature, N for newborn. And what that means is it's referring to how fast that nipple is, because they want to keep it a slow paced flow, like with breastfeeding. And what I have my breastfeeding families do, especially or not even breastfeeding, if you're just exclusively pumping and giving bottles, is especially with our newborns, is to keep the bottle parallel to the ground. So when I think about a breastfeeding baby and they're laying down and they're eating, when I'm feeding a baby a bottle that's also breastfeeding, I'll put milk in the bottle and I'll have them on their side, and I'll keep, this is how I hold the baby in real life, but I want to show you here. I keep the bottle parallel to the ground for them. And what that does is it allows them to suck, suck, swallow, and it slows the flow down. So they're not going swallow, 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 swallow. And we want to make sure it's not too fast. Okay. Now, most bottles on the market are very competitive these days. They pretty much all, I've yet to see one that hasn't done this yet, but they all start with a slow flow nipple because they want to make sure it's not too fast. And there's different shapes and sizes. I find that a wide based bottle helps them with the latch, a slow flow nipple. You will all find that your baby likes a certain bottle. And it's okay if it's not a wide base, if they use something more narrow. You'll see on bottles different shapes and nipple sizes. It might be round, it might be flat. At the end of the day, what's important is to just find a bottle that your baby likes. And then once you've decided that bottle, you can just pick one and stick with it. There's no really need to change like a million bottles or buy a ton of products here. You just want to pick a bottle and stick with it. I do feel that when I think about nipple confusion, I think that's a common question that people will have. If you get started with breastfeeding, pumping in bottles early on, let's say you're trying to get your milk supply in or your baby's working on gaining weight, where I think I hear mostly about nipple confusion is that a mom will get started with breastfeeding, her milk doesn't fully come in, so we're supplementing the baby to help them gain weight, but that mom wasn't usually given a good pumping plan, or we haven't driven that full milk supply in. So the baby's now getting bottles, and the supply is kind of dipping or going down because we might not be expressing or stimulating the nipples as much. So then when you go to bring your baby back to breast, they don't want to do it. And it's usually not that they don't like your nipple or your boob and that they love the bottle more. It's just that they want milk. And again, there's different caveats and scenarios, but that's a common one that I see. So if I'm able to help that mom with breastfeeding and or pumping to tell that body, let's make more milk, we can usually get that baby back to the breast again once that flow is there. So I just want to point that out because that is a very common question that I get from people. And I'll show you one more thing. It might be trickier on a Zoom call, but my favorite position to feed a baby is if I'm sitting on the couch and I'm kind of comfy and relaxed, I'll put that baby in my legs on their side. They're slightly elevated, which can help with reflux. And then I'm able to come from the side and give them their bottle. This is one of my favorite ways to feed a newborn because I'm not comfy now because I'm sitting on a chair, but I can be comfy cozy on my couch. The baby is on their side, just like with breastfeeding. They're slightly elevated and the bottle is parallel to the ground. So that's a little tip if you want to try that, or if you're having a partner or family member give a bottle, you can show them that position. So let's talk a little bit about safe storage guidelines. I think that's very relevant for when we're talking about collecting milk, as well as if you are triple feeding. Triple feeding means breastfeeding, pumping, and supplementing. You'll find a lot of guidelines out there. I want to call that out as well. There are varying guidelines, not just within our country, but I know a lot of you are from other countries, so you'll see varying guidelines in different places. And this really is because breast milk is quite sturdy. And so you'll see these ranges if you look this up online. Here in the United States, the CDC uses the rule of 4s, meaning breast milk is able to sit out for 4 hours at room temperature. It's good in the fridge for about 4 days. It's good in your freezer for about 4 to 6 months. However, I love talking about this, and there's amazing research out there now. When breast milk, in some of the newer studies, it was left sitting out in extreme temperatures for a long period of time. And when the research looked at that milk later, it hadn't grown any bacteria or pathogens. So we call it liquid gold for a reason. I do want to call out that breast milk is incredibly robust. And I think there's this element of like what you'll read online and what the medical recommendation is. And just to be real about it, there's this real life parenting advice for it, right? So there are some parents who will have their milk in a bag for 4 days in the fridge, and they realize on day 5 that they didn't put it in the freezer or use it. And if it smells good and it tastes good, that mom might choose to use it, and that's okay. So I want you to like think about those things when you're looking at recommendations. Like, what do we know through research? What do we not know through research? Formula is very different. Formula is, it's not full of those living antibodies and the same components as breast milk. It is different in that sense, meaning that it's prepared. And so once you need to look at your formula cans, but once you open a can of formula, it's usually good for a month. And after a month, it's not good anymore. Once you prepare it and you have it, like some people will make a batch of it, like lemonade, it's good in the fridge for about 24 hours. When you mix up a bottle and it's at room temperature for about 2 hours, once you start feeding your baby a bottle of formula, good for 1 hour. I really do follow the formula guidelines more closely, because it could grow, could get yucky, right? If it's been sitting out for a long time versus my breast milk. When we think about breast milk, when you bag it and freeze it, okay, and then you take it out of the freezer, we consider that breast milk now good for about 24 hours after you've defrosted it. And that's really because it does start to sort of, and you'll notice this as parents, if you ever smell and taste your breast milk, it starts to lose its flavor and its components a little bit. So I usually teach parents to use their oldest milk first. So let's say you went to work all day and you pumped and you brought home a ton of milk at the end of the day. It might feel easy to just dump that milk into bottles for your baby the next day. But if you have milk in the freezer, you're going to want to date it, and you're going to want to pull that old milk first, just so you avoid waste, honestly. So the cycle may be, when you're working, that when you get home from work at the end of the day, you freeze what you made that day. And then you take out of the freezer what's there from a few months ago, and you put it in your fridge overnight, just like chicken, and it defrosts by the morning, and you can use that milk for your baby's bottles the next day. You'll all find yourself in different feeding patterns based on how much you are producing and how much you do have stored. Not everybody will have freezers full of milk. Many women that I work with are living day to day. So when they go that day at work and they pump, they make exactly what their baby needs that next day. And they're not actually stockpiling and saving copious amounts of milk here. So let's just normalize that everybody will make something different as well. I want to talk about how your partner can support you. I think that's a really important piece to this. Just like with breastfeeding, pumping is a lot of work. I've had 3 kids. I have pumped for various, very different reasons for each of my journeys, honestly. And it's a lot of work, right? We are, stopping our day to put something on us, even when it's hands-free. There's bits, there's pieces. We need to assemble things. We're then applying it to ourselves. We're probably stopping anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 minutes to pump. Then when we're done pumping, we're bagging our milk, we're dating it. There's a lot of mental load, right, for us out there doing this. And then we're cleaning everything. And so it is a lot of work, and I want to call that out. And so if you are pumping, maybe you're pumping early on for various reasons. Maybe you are breastfeeding, pumping, and bottle feeding. That is a lot of work. Maybe you're back at work and you're starting to pump more. Or maybe you're exclusively pumping, like I referenced earlier. Whatever it looks like, it is a lot of work. And so, especially those first 4 weeks home, there's a lot going on. We're recovering from childbirth. We're feeding a baby all the time, every 2 to 3 hours. We have fragmented sleep. We're up all night. We do fall asleep, but then they're up again to eat. And so there's a lot happening. And we're in a bit of survival mode, I would say. And so I think having a partner or family members help is really, really important. It is quite common for me, and I did this after my first, that I took on a lot by myself after my first baby. I was breastfeeding exclusively. So when I got up in the middle of the night to breastfeed, I started doing all the other things. And well, I'm up anyway, so I'll do the diaper, I'll reswaddle the baby, I'll help them fall back asleep, I'll get them down, or I'm home all day on maternity leave. So I'll start to take on, I guess I'll run the laundry, I guess I'll wash all the parts, I'm here anyway. This is very common when we're home on leave, that we start to take on more. And it's hard to ask for help. It's hard to accept help. And so I want you to find ways that your partner can help you, especially when you're breastfeeding or you're pumping. Your partner, your family, they want to help you usually in almost every scenario that I see. And so I want you to think about, how could they help you? How can you tag team? That might be like, I'm going to handle all the feeds and the pumping. And when I'm done, I always want you to take the baby and get them in a clean diaper and get them swaddled and soothed, so I can have a minute to put my shirt back on and take some water and eat something. When I think about household tasks, laundry, groceries, like what can people do for you in those early weeks to help you? When you have people coming over, can they fold the laundry for you? Can they wash all of your pump parts and all of your bottle parts while they're there? Do you need to outsource stuff like groceries or meals for a short period of time? And how can you tag team to give yourself some extra sleep? And so a lot of parents will come to me. They may be breastfeeding, they may be pumping, they may have introduced the bottle, and everybody's really tired when you have a newborn. And sometimes it might look like deciding that you're choosing for your partner to do one of the feeds so that you can sleep or shower or step away from the scene. There's a lot of really cool ways that we can look at tag teaming. I think it'll be very different for each family based on how your feeding experience is going and who's there to help you. But we can get creative. And I guess what I really just want to drive home here is that everybody needs support and everybody deserves help. And it can feel really hard to ask for this type of help when you are home with a baby. And there's a lot of research to show that sleep can really help with mental health, especially when we look at perinatal mood disorders like anxiety or depression. And so when I think about tag teaming a night or having your partner do a bottle of pumped milk that you made for them so that you can sleep, that can have really big impacts for you. So we're constantly just thinking about you and your family and your feeding situation to help you make that right plan. I purposely made this a bit shorter so that we would have a lot of time together for questions. And I see that there are many, many questions out there. So I want to come back out and talk with you. But I want to quickly tell you about Nurture by NAPS, our online membership platform, because you all can access us, especially through Mom Cozy with our partnership this month. We have given you a lot of resources. I actually did some calls with some of you after last week's webinar. So if you ever want to talk to a nurse, when you log into our online platform, Nurture by NAPS, we have over 100 videos. We have an Ask a Nurse board where you can post a question anytime. So maybe you want to say, I listened to your webinar and I have pain with pumping. Can you help me? Or maybe you say, I have breast milk. I don't know how long it's good for. You can go on and ask a question anytime, and a registered nurse or nurse practitioner will answer you within 24 hours. We have weekly meetups multiple times a week. Real nurses and nurse practitioners get on live calls like this, and we're just available to our members to answer any questions. So I have parents, moms, and dads hopping on, asking me questions in real time. But we want to make sure that you feel like you have that support. And anytime you ask me a question, I'm going to think about, okay, What do we know through research? What do we not know? What are your options? And then I'm going to help you pick an option that feels best for your family. Because just like sizing these flanges, one size isn't going to fit all. And this is like anything from pregnancy to parenting, things are going to come up all the time. And so we need to help you find what's going to work best for your family. You have so much access to us through our Mom Cozy partnership. This month with Mom Cozy, we made you a special code, Mom Cozy 20. You can book 30-minute calls with myself or one of the nurses. You can do virtual lactation consulting with us, or you can check out our membership using this code. So that's just a little bit about NAPS. I want to jump out and answer your questions in real time, and then I'll come back again to this screen because we have a QR code. We'd like to know your feedback after this webinar too, but I think since we have so much time, I want to come back out. Want to do questions first, and then we can share the QR code?
Yes, and then we're going to do our live giveaway, and you have to stay on the call. We're going to give away 10 breastfeeding energy bags at the very end.
I
So
almost forgot the best
stick
part is
on
like the giveaways at
and
the
your
end.
naps giveaways. Okay, we have a lot of questions, y'all. We're not going to get to all of them, but we're going to do a fire round with you, Emily. Is that
I'm
cool?
ready. And I want to clarify too, I gave you all a sprinkle of content. And so I hope you're not feeling overwhelmed. There's a lot that goes into pumping and feeding journeys. So I just wanted you to have a sprinkle. But if you're really struggling, and we'll know it through these questions, like let's talk. There's so many different plans. So
Awesome.
right, I'm
First
ready.
question. First question I'm going to ask you is, can pumping alone increase supply and output?
Yes, absolutely. And so I do encourage you all at some point to watch the webinar last week where we really talked about supply and demand. And so after delivery, our body, when the placenta detaches and when the baby delivers, and when we initiate breastfeeding or pumping, it is telling the brain, hey, buddy, let's circulate more hormones to help drive the milk in. What's cool about breastfeeding and pumping, or just making milk in general, is it is usually, everybody's different, but largely speaking, it's supply and demand. So every time we stimulate the nipple, the areola, and the breast tissue, it's telling the body to make hormones that drive in and increase our milk supply. That could be done through breastfeeding. That can be done with pumping. Pumping is meant to mimic your baby. And actually, not to go on too much of a tangent, but I didn't mention this, it's important to know. You'll feel your pumps do different things, right? And you all can tell me this, right? It goes bzz, 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 bzz. Okay, it's trying to mimic your baby. When a baby goes to the breast, they're like a little gremlin. They're like frantic. They're give me the milk, give me the milk, and they do a frantic, shallow suck, suck, suck. But once milk gets flowing, they slow down and they slow down that suck. So you probably have noticed your pumps are built to mimic that. So yes, you can bring in your milk. You can maintain your milk. You can even boost your milk supply with extra feeding or pumping sessions or power pumping sessions. Really cool stuff.
Awesome. A lot of questions around choosing your pump.
Yes.
One person had the question, is a wearable pump enough? Do I also have to have like a double electric hospital grade pump? And other questions, just how do you even choose a pump?
It's very overwhelming to choose a pump. I do think, and I do this with my pregnant patients all the time, they're often given a list from their provider or from their insurance company. I do think a really great place to start is obviously what's covered. There's amazing products on the market. Typically speaking, what is covered could be something hospital grade. And so when you are bringing in your milk supply and establishing your supply, I do think having a hospital grade pump can be very effective to really drive in your milk, make sure you've got it there and it stayed. I do love the hands-free pumps for my moms who, let's say you get 2 or 3 months out and you're like, I am going to be exclusively pumping, or I am back at work, or I think about myself, I'm a mom of 3 kids. I was wearing the hands-free pump while driving home from gymnastics with my older daughter when my other daughter was like 8 weeks old. So these offer convenience and flexibility. So again, establishing milk supply is key. And then I usually have my patients move into the wearables. That's not to say that you can't use this right out of the gates. Some people can. But if I have women who get engorged easily or have an oversupply or they're prone to clogged ducts, to be very honest, I do find myself using a combination, and that's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
But I would talk to your insurance or your provider and just start with what is covered. And then
Mhm.
if you are pumping a lot or you're back at work or you are exclusively pumping, I absolutely would look into the hands-free pumps for flexibility and convenience because we're all
Yeah.
momming and we're all very busy.
I will say our S12, our first pump, is typically covered by most insurance as well as our
Great.
M5. So please check with your insurance plan. And I love several people have noted in the chat, you can have different pumps for different scenarios.
Yes,
Truly.
you can.
There's not one size fits all on this.
Yeah.
All right. Another question is so sorry.
There's a lot of them for you to go through. You guys are amazing. So many amazing questions.
The fridge hack. We had a lot of questions around the fridge hack.
I had a feeling I was going to stimulate some questions around
You
that.
had a lot.
Yeah, that's
You guys
okay.
are so detailed. I love this group.
I'm okay with that.
So, do I have to put them in a clean Ziploc bag every time? Do I just
Yeah.
place them in the fridge overnight? How long can they stay in the fridge? Do I have to rinse the parts before?
Yep. Okay. So let's talk this through a little bit because this is not like a recommendation or something that you're going to read online. It's sort of like looking at medical advice and research versus mom advice and like real life parenting advice. Okay. So when I look at breast milk, I can see those guidelines of like breast milk is good in the fridge for up to 4 days. When I look at the latest research, I could argue that it probably is even better than that, right? Like looking at latest research, it's pretty incredible to see how robust and resistant it is to bacteria and pathogens. What we worry about when we're washing and cleaning stuff is we don't want it to get yucky. We don't want it to grow bacteria and pathogens. We don't want to make our baby sick, which is why we wash things. Breast milk is different from formula though, okay? So if I have a clean pump parts, and I'm at work in the morning. I did this as a nurse practitioner, and I have sterile, clean pump parts that I'm going to use for the day. And I've just pumped, and breast milk went into my parts. Okay. Using the theory that breast milk is good in the fridge for 4 days, if I put my pump parts that are just with breast milk on them or condensation directly into the fridge and keep them cold, I'm preserving the breast milk, right? So a lot of my moms, what they'll do is, I'm going to use this just because it's easier to see on the big screen, is they'll pump at work, they'll stop, they'll take the milk that they collected and they'll bag it. But then what they'll do instead of rinsing and washing and cleaning is they'll put their pump back together like this and they'll put it in a clean bag. Call it a Ziploc bag or a reusable bag, a clean bag, and they'll put it into the fridge. And all day long, they'll pull it in and out. And when you come back to it, it's going to be cold and you're going to see a little condensation of breast milk in it, right? And then we're pumping again. And at the end of the day, we will take it apart and we will wash it. And so that's an example where the risk of that breast milk being gross or growing pathogens from putting it in out of the fridge all day is incredibly, incredibly low, if at all, based on research. And the benefit is that it saved you time in your day as a really busy mom who is pumping exclusively or working. Does that make sense? So that's how I think about it.
Awesome. Sounds good. Topic of formula. I'm going to bring this up because I think it's really important to know.
Yeah.
Some moms have questions, some worries. Before I go into the hospital, should I bring a can of formula in case I need to use it? And how do I know I need to supplement with formula? What are
Yes.
your thoughts on that?
Really great question. So, pretty much every major medical center, and I want to be mindful that there are people that are out in other countries. So I
Yes.
do imagine that this will look different in other places. When I think about here in the United States and other countries that I am more familiar with, hospitals do stock formula. If you think about it, if a baby has a low blood sugar and they're in the NICU and the mom can't breastfeed, we want to make sure that baby gets their blood sugar up. So hospitals will always have this on hand. What they have will depend on what companies support them and stock them. So major medical centers, I'm located in Boston. Here in Boston, most of the major hospitals stock Similac and Enfamil. And so the quick answer is no, you probably do not need to bring formula to the hospital because they should have it. And if you needed it, what's most appropriate is that somebody comes and tells you why. Hey, I am making this recommendation. And if they don't tell you why, you need to say to them, I hear you making this recommendation. Can you tell me more about why you're making this recommendation for me and my baby? Because then it forces them to say, oh, well, I'm thinking that your milk isn't in yet and your baby's blood sugar's low and we want to get their blood sugar up. right? Sometimes you have to make people tell you why they're doing things. If you are planning to combo feed and you're saying like, I'm planning to breastfeed, I'm planning to pump, and I am planning to use formula, some of my patients then say, I do want to bring my own formula to the hospital because I want to give my baby like the formula that I'm always planning on using. But I think that that's a less likely scenario. Does that answer the question okay?
I think it does. And
Okay.
somebody did bring up the topic of donor milk. Can they
Mhm.
ask for donor
Yes.
breast milk in the hospital?
You can. Again, this is going to depend on your hospital. So these are really great questions to ask your OBs and midwives while you're pregnant. These are fantastic questions. Hospitals have donor milk. Some will only release it to babies that are in the NICU or sick babies. So if you have a healthy full-term baby and you're on a postpartum unit and you want to use donor milk, they might not give it to you. You might have to get it yourself or bring it yourself. It is going to depend. So I would ask these questions. Like when I think about a birth plan, just like you're thinking about, would you want pain management or not? Do you want to do skin to skin? Feeding questions are very relevant to be putting on your birth plan. Hey, if my milk isn't in or if my baby needs to be supplemented, do you offer donor breast milk? What does that look like? Do you offer formula? What do you stock? These are questions I would absolutely be asking your providers. They're very fair questions to ask.
I also, just a quick thing here, I did speak with our local milk bank. I'm in Austin, Texas, and they do have some programs. There is a shortage of donor milk right now. So moms, if you have extra to spare, it's hard to ask that of people. Please reach out to your local milk bank because there are moms in need if you have extra to spare. But some, they in particular have worked with the hospital and do provide it if there is extra. So that's a great point. All right, breastfeeding. So Karina is breastfeeding baby. And is it important to pump your breast after the breastfeeding session if you feel like the baby didn't fully empty, like maybe baby just got full
Great
to avoid
question.
block ducts?
This is where we're walking that delicate dance, right?
Yeah,
You
I know.
probably heard out there, don't pump when you're breastfeeding. You don't want to get an oversupply. You don't want to make too much milk. And yes, that is true to an extent, but there are women who do need to pump early on. If breastfeeding is going well and your milk is in and you have a deep latch and you can hear your baby swallowing and they have what I would call an effective feed, you're still maybe going to feel some milk in your breast after, even though they ate really well. And that's okay. If you're comfortable, if you're not in pain, if you're not engorged, you should move on. And at the next feed, you can start with that other side. You're just going to keep going because we want your body to adjust to that supply and demand. And in the beginning, and I showed this last week on screen, your baby's stomach when they're first born is the size of a marble. And by a week old, it's about a ping pong ball. So the body often brings in more milk than is needed. And then your baby is taking small amounts really frequently. So I understand and can appreciate you're going to feel full or still like milk is in there after a feed. Now, they're really fun, right? Because they'll eat for 10 to 15 minutes on this side. And then a normal newborn behavior is that they might take a break of up to 30 minutes. And then all of a sudden they're interested in eating again. And
They're
what we
back.
do is, yes, we feed our baby for 10 to 15 minutes. They fall asleep. They're 2 weeks old, right? We put them down. And then 30 minutes later, they're rooting again. And we think, oh, why are you still hungry? Did you not get enough? Did I not feed you enough? That is a normal newborn behavior. So I just want you to pick them up and put them on the other side. If you had pumped to drain your breasts and they want to eat 30 minutes later, they're probably not going to be as happy with you because when they go to latch on, the milk isn't as flowing. Now, there are reasons to pump after a feed. So let's say you're getting going with breastfeeding and your baby's struggling with breastfeeding. Your milk is in, but something about their latch, they're struggling. Okay, maybe it's anatomy, maybe it's something oral in their mouth, maybe they're premature, maybe they just didn't get it yet. And so let's say you put them to breast for 10 to 15 minutes and they're on and off a lot, or there's discomfort with the latch, or you feel them sucking, but you're like, I don't know if I hear swallowing. And you're like, I don't know that that was an effective feed. Then I would want you to pump after that session to move that milk along so your brain knows somebody here ate so that your milk supply doesn't go down.
Mhm.
This is tricky. This is really tricky. This is why working with a lactation consultant is very helpful because we're navigating that balance of like, are they swallowing? Is it working? Should I be pumping? Should I not? If you pump after every breastfeeding session, you are going to tell your brain and your body, hey, make more milk. And then you might get engorged or an oversupply. So we're walking this really delicate dance.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. These are
that's
great
great.
questions.
Yeah. Back to the milk.
Yes.
Can you mix frozen and fresh milk together?
Based on newer research, the answer to that is yes. You may
Okay.
still find online no. um, so when I think about frozen breast milk, once you defrost it, you do want to use it within 24 hours.
Hmm.
So you may defrost that breast milk and go to pour it into a bottle, and you have 3 ounces, and maybe you just pumped an ounce with your wearable Mom Cozy pump. You may go ahead and put that in the bottle and feed your baby. But now that it's been mixed, I'm going to use the older date in my brain for that milk. So if the baby didn't finish that bottle, probably not going to reuse it because that milk had been defrosted and I don't want to reheat it again. Does that make sense? Now, here's another, I'm going to debunk another myth for you. Let's say you're pumping all day or you're wearing a milk collector in your bra and you collect milk. You can walk over to your fridge, and when you've collected that little bit of milk, you can put it in a bottle, you can put it in your fridge. And then 2 hours later, that milk is cold. If you collected another half ounce or ounce, you may go ahead back to your fridge and you can add that freshly expressed milk to the cold milk. Whenever you, this is why I like these bags, the Mom Cozy bags have capacity and date. Let me tell you why this is like this. The date is important because we want to backdate it, so we give it credit. I pumped some of this yesterday, so I'm going to date it as yesterday. So that when we go to use it from the fridge or the freezer, we want to use the oldest milk first. Capacity is important. If I dump 4 ounces into this bag, I am going to write 4 ounces because when breast milk freezes, it expands. So if I go back and pull a bag out 2 months later, it's going to look like 6 ounces. So I actually want to know what's in the bag as well.
Awesome.
You're
I
welcome.
know we touched really, really a lot on colostrum harvesting
Yeah.
last webinar, but we're just receiving so many questions. When
Okay.
can you start harvesting colostrum in your journey? And is it important to harvest colostrum? Do you need to?
This came up last week, and we actually pulled an article to share with you all that we can do with the recording. This is, again, a great question for your OB or your midwife because you will hear varying answers. Typically speaking, after 37 weeks is when providers will tell you that you can go ahead and collect colostrum. It's really cool. Your body starts making colostrum in the second trimester. So you may see it like leaking or glistening on your nipples after the shower, or if you kind of like express a little bit. And so the thought, or I suppose the worry, is that if you're offering nipple stimulation, there are providers who think that I don't know if this is based on research or more theory, that like it could put you in labor. So oftentimes people will say, don't stimulate your breast or your nipple till your full term. Full term is 37 weeks. I know your due dates are 40 weeks, but full term is 37 weeks. But to harvest colostrum, you would get tiny, tiny syringes. You can find them on Amazon, or if you have infant syringes, they're quite tiny. And really what you're doing is, oh, I don't have a boob, but you're expressing your breast down, some compression down into your areola and your nipple, and you're going to see a little of that colostrum come out, and you can collect it into that syringe. And if you do it a few times a day, you can collect what you get all day. And then it usually comes with stickers in the kit, so you can date it and put it in the freezer. And so women will come to labor and delivery or postpartum with a bag, probably like this, with a couple tiny syringes in it of colostrum. And I'll take a newborn, and before or after breastfeeding, we put the syringe right in their mouth, and we'll just kind of give them that colostrum, which is packed of antibodies and nutrients.
Awesome. I know we're not going to get to like half these questions just because
These are
that's how it works,
amazing
but I
questions, but I
do.
love to talk to you all. I can talk to you all anytime. You can book a call with me. You can talk to me on the Facebook group.
Yes,
You can
yes.
join Nurture by NAPS for the month and just ask questions on the board.
I love it. Yes. Can you just touch on one more thing really,
Sure.
really quick is warming milk. How
Yeah,
do you warm it? Where do you warm it? If you're out traveling, do you also need to warm milk?
great
Tell me more.
question. So I'll tell you too, if you come onto our Instagram, Nurture by Naps, and go down just a few posts, there is a video of me
It's so
uh,
good.
showing you how to defrost breast milk that you can watch in real time. And so there's a couple different ways that you can do this. If you have cold breast milk, some babies will drink cold breast milk, and that's fine. You can give them a cold bottle, it can barely be room temperature. If they don't mind, go for it. I will say, when I have parents reach out to me, say, Emily, my baby won't take a bottle. Emily, my baby's being weird with the bottle. It's usually because of the temperature. So the number one tip I have is if your baby's being funny about it, to warm it up. Even though you might not want to because it's a pain in the butt and it's an extra step, but just warm it up and that usually fixes the problem. But if they take a cold bottle, fine, that's not bad or mean. If you have frozen breast milk in a bag, you can take it out and you can fill a giant bowl or coffee mug with hot water and you can stick the bag into the hot water and walk away. And when you come back, you'll see that it's melted. Or you can just turn the sink on. And when you watch this Instagram video, you'll see what I'm saying out loud because I literally show this in the video. You can run hot water and you can just put the bag under the hot water and you can melt it. Okay. And then once it's defrosted, you can pour it in. Or I joked about this earlier. You can pick. Thank you for the comments. You guys are all so sweet.
They love you. You're a
Love you guys.
star.
You can take the frozen milk out of the freezer and put it in your fridge at night, like chicken. And in the morning, it's defrosted. And then you can make your bottles.
That's what your
There's,
partner can do. Take it
yeah,
out like chicken and
yeah.
put it in the fridge.
Honestly, I got to tell you, a lot of partners that I work with a lot of parents and dads, and they really want to help. So when I come into the home or when I do a virtual class, I teach them how to not only wash pump parts, but
Good.
how to assemble the pump.
Please.
Because then if they hear their partner say, I need to go sit down and pump, they can be like, here, like they've
Good.
already put it together for you to use. It's amazing. Like, and you're like, one small thing like that is huge for
Yeah,
a postpartum one. I say, do you
absolutely.
offer, I teach all the time. I teach
Mm.
classes all the time. You guys
She's
are so,
always teaching.
oh,
Awesome.
love to,
Thank you.
yeah, love to see you all again. This is an amazing crowd.
Thank you guys. Yes, I want to touch on a couple housekeeping items. Emily does
Let me
teach.
share the QR code too for you.
Yes. And they're offering for our Mom Cozy family a 20% discount off a membership. Please take advantage of it. With a it's Mom Cozy 20 is the checkout code. All right. So if you loved it, if you hated it, we need to know. Take a picture of this QR code to take our 5-minute survey, please. Very, very important. We listen to all of the feedback and it literally impacts us for the next round. We come together every Friday. So next Friday's topic is breastfeeding and back to work. And then we're gonna do have two more fun prizes for you. The first one is Mom Cozy is also offering you 20% off on all Mom Cozy products through August. So if you have been eyeing a pump, you have the availability to get that at 20%. And because we love NAPS so much, our code is NAPS20. So come to momcozy.com, NAPS20, and then go to NAPS, get that membership with MomCozy20. All right. And yes, you are going to get this recording delivered to you next Friday. With that, we're going to do the fun part. We are going to give away 10 breastfeeding energy bags. You have to be on the call to win it. Inside our breastfeeding energy bag are some wonderful, fun little goodies inside. So we are going to do this is how it works. If I call your name, you have to type here in the chat.
Dun, dun,
And
dun.
then you have to email me at mcp@momcozy.com. I'm not going to email you. You're going to email me just because there's so many of you here. So we are going to start. I'm scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. First one is Louisa Chu. Louisa Chu. Second name is Megan Rose. Hi, Louisa. Okay, Megan Rose.
There's Megan.
All right, third one, we have Leanna Brown. Number
There she
4.
is.
Yeah, keep saying there she is because I like can't
Yeah,
see.
I will. It's so you're an
All right, the
incredible
third
crowd.
one. Fourth one is Jessica and Doll. Jessica and Doll. The fifth bag goes to Stephanie Lee. The
I see
sixth
Stephanie
bag
Lee.
goes
There's
to,
Jessica.
okay, Stephanie Lee, we're waiting for you. Valerie Foot. Valerie Foot. The sixth bag is Tria Vadgama. Tria Vadgama. The eighth bag goes to
I see
Jay.
Tria. I don't see Valerie yet. Valerie, are you there?
Valerie, you're not here. We're moving
I might have missed you, but
on. Okay. The eighth bag goes to Jade Calog. Caluag. Stephanie Lee is here. She just said something. The chat.
perfect.
The
There's
ninth
Valerie.
goes to Sarah Kasim. Sarah Kasim. And the 10th goes to, oh, scrolling. Where will I stop? Nobody knows. Stop. Ashton Lipton is our last winner of the bag. Ashton Lipton,
I see all your names
congratulations.
now. You all are so fun and out there. The chat is bumping.
It's bumping. Remember, send me an email at mcp@momcozy.com and I will get you hooked up. And you also get a year-long NAPS membership as well. Again, please don't forget to take our survey. Next week's topics is breastfeeding and back to work. So if you're a working mom, all of us are working mamas. If you are working, you know what I mean. Please join us in an office. And we have a lot in store for you. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you so much
Congratulations
for
and
having
bye-bye.
me. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.